Hello everybody and welcome to the first part of What If Naruto Was Devoured by Hatred. I hope you enjoy this what if. Also don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest episodes. The Abyss. Chapter 1. Black, that's all there is. The black. A name. I have never had one. A home. The darkness is all I have ever had. A friend, I have the voice. Yes, the voice has taught me, shielded me from the pain, brought me back from the precipice of madness. QB, yes, that's what it called itself. But, it doesn't help me out of the kindness of its heart, no. It helps me because of the seal. That's all that I can remember besides the pain. This pain and darkness has been the only thing besides the voice I have ever known. In a way I covet them, for they let me know I exist. I am alive. The voice said I should not be, but it refused to die in such a way without revenge on the insects cowering beneath the scattered leaves. These insects are the ones that cursed us. The QB. And I. He says that through our hate they will suffer. Hate, I don't know what it is. I know its meaning. The voice has shown me many things. To think, to know, to exist. QB has taught me to know the pathetic spells of the insects. He says they're the instruments to our revenge. To end the dark. The dark? To end it. The voice takes its time answering. The time to ascend from this hypocritical hell has come at last. I remain in the dark, listening to the continued grumbles of its booming voice to make sure that it was truly speaking. So many times have I wanted to hear a voice, any voice, say those words. Many times I imagine the voices attach them to faces the QB showed me in his lessons. Always they would fade, for the memories weren't ever mine, for mine are all black. As remain there if it was a there. I feel this thing well inside of me, an intense, a fiery hate. Why have I suffered through this black when others have faces, others have happiness, others lived with anything? Why should I live in the dark when others live in light? Why should I live in pain when of others feel the pain? It's been a long time since I actually felt it. It's always there, but it's been long since it could hurt me. But if I can escape the smothering embrace of this darkness and pain, then I'll be damned if I want. A chuckle is heard echoing throughout the abyss. Creepy woo, such a silly expression for me to say. I have always been damned. The hate is quickly building once again in within me, ready to explode if it isn't released soon. QB, help me prepare our release. I bellowed this at the voice. I can even feel its presence now. The rumbles throughout the dark. Very well, you know the sign well enough. He chuckles out, you will provide the incantations and I will provide the power for our release. But be forewarned, once free we will not be of the same worlds. I will return to the spirit world until my power recovers, and you will return to yours. Your physical being may be warped by your spirit's sufferings. You are no longer completely human. And we will no longer be bound. These words wash over me without a second thought. We were merely bound by pain and hate. I have no regrets to leaving this hell. I prepare my voice once more in the dark. Let us sever that which binds us together. I can feel the voice's approval. Let's begin. I begin the hand signs the voice taught me. QB has already began to feed me his evil chakra. As his bloodlusting crimson energy beings to combine with my black energies, I can feel all the hate and want and every emotion the fox has given me run through me like liquid fire. And as I prepare the last hand sign and the QB prepares the last of his chakra, I can feel the everything tearing apart. The tremendous power tears through the darkness and me like white-hot fire. Each second is an eternity waiting for it all to end. I can feel a warmth. I can no longer feel the pain or QB or anything but this new warmth. But the darkness is still here, but I can feel. As I try to speak, a need erupts in me and I take my first ragged breaths. I can hear so many things, it's so wonderful. You don't look so good, buddy, came from a new voice in the dark. 1 Chapter 2. Rebirth. Breathe. Is that mine? Am I really breathing? I couldn't understand how I could be breathing. That means I have a body. I escaped after all. I lost consciousness shortly after my arrival. I know that now. But if I escaped, why am I still in the dark? Why cannot see the colors of this world as the QB had told me I would? Was he lying? After a few minutes contemplation, I decided it was too much just right now. It was all too much. This living thing, the numbness, the darkness seemed different. As I stirred, I felt my resisting my will, wanting to remain in that calm, comfortable spot. I sat up realizing that my body hadn't been used properly in such a long time. I was always with the voice inside my mind. It was also black in there. As I sit there wondering if it was real, I hear the soft thuds coming towards me. The squeak of sword grinding and then a snap. I sit there quietly listening for more to prove I really existed. "So you're finally awake, huh?" said a deep gruff voice. I just listened for more. The voice just sounded so nice. "I see you're the talkative type," he laughed softly. I turn in the voice's direction, hearing a much softer thumping from his direction, and realize it must be talking to me. I ask it hopefully, "Am I alive?" The new voice takes a moment and answered very softly, "Yes. I'm alive," I say to myself. The voice answer again, but I could not hear, for I had already began to laugh and laugh and laugh until every breath in my body came in ragged intakes. I felt a shift in the air, and before I knew, I was covered in an endless warmth. With each second my laughter abated and my sobs took their place as I held tighter to this unfamiliar warmth. All of my being shook with the feeling of finally being liberated from abyss to be reborn into a world that cast me away. A world that will feel my fury. As the warmth begins to move backward and forward, I feel my consciousness slip from my grasp and the heaviness of the warmth overtake me. I manage one last sentence before the emptiness take me. "Who are you?" The voice responds with Kioski. Kioski's point of view. As I lay the small figure down, I take in the full extent of his mangled features. For the figure was most definitely a boy. Skin was a mixture of scarred white tissue and ashen gray and black hues. He seemed to be young to endure this. For he was not born with these slights. There are obvious signs of torture on his features. Some sick bastards did this to a child, he thought, disgusted with people in general. The boy's frame seemed as if he was starved and burned for many years. His face seemed like that of a mask to symbolize true pain. The boy had most of his ears cut off, but enough still to hear. The skin on his face seemed dyed completely and drawn back like a mummy's. His mouth was partially sewn up, but he had cut the strings to allow him to breathe. His eyes seemed to have been completely torn out. The lids were also sewn shut. He didn't have the heart to them loose and look into those hollow pits. He was having enough trouble with just looking at the child and stopping himself from killing something. He couldn't stop himself from wanting to help the child when Zabuza came with him from the forest. "I'm determined to make this child's life as easy as I can possibly can," he said to himself. After many hours of watching the child sleep, he decided to prepare for the child's stay in the village. As he got up, the boy stirred and sat up. He remained frozen, unknowing of what to do. "Are you leaving?" came the rasping voice. "I was about to consult my village about your arrival," I said sullenly. I hated talking to the council members nowadays. The boy turned his head on me and asked, "Village?" "Yes, you're in the village, hidden in the mist," I say softly. He merely sat with his head down. So I decide to take the initiative. "What's your name?" I ask as kindly as I can manage. He turned to me slowly and said, "I have none." I could tell he was lying, but I didn't want to press him, but I was short on time. I asked again, "What is your name?" He says with slow consideration, "Naruto." It will be explained later why I am using this instead of Naruto. I study him for a moment. He seemed to be telling the truth, but his sense of reality must to ask you for his name to be considered anything to him. So I accept it. "Naruto," I say slowly, "are you hungry?" He nods with time. So I leave to make him a tray of something. I make it large enough so he can get his fill. As I return, I watch as he is following the movements of an ant with his finger. His senses are pretty advanced, I comment to myself. "Tell me how you like it, but don't be too brutal," I say jokingly. He picks at the food with his hands before I even set it down. He brings some to his nose and slowly puts it in his mouth. At that moment I saw that his torment had also cut out his tongue. His speech seemed fine though. Then I realized the small chakra waves I sensed earlier was the boy manipulating the vibrations in his throat with chakra. Which is extraordinary control for one his age. "How did this happen to you?" I ask bluntly. He says the most heart-rending thing I have heard, "I was born into it." I sit staring at the ground, gauging his feelings, and realize that he was telling the truth. So I ask no more on the subject. "You have nothing, don't you?" I ask in my usual tact. He nods. So do I. Then you will live here with this old man. And learn the ways of the shinobi. You will be reborn. Chapter 3. A new name. Naruto's point of view. As I sit upon the bed, I cannot help but think of the old man. He's so kind to me, and yet he knows nothing about me. Me. I still cannot quite understand what I am yet. The Kyuubi said I was no longer human. Does that mean I was human once? One of the insects that imprisoned us? I cannot think of this now, it's just too much. Kioski, he seemed so kind, allowing me to become shinobi. Whatever that is. He talked to me for so long, he said I can live with him. I can live. I will live with my new name. The voice had told me the name that the one who damned me gave me. Naruto, what a strange name. I just changed it enough for my liking. It is the only thing that I have. The old man went to his village prepare things for my living with him. I wonder why he wants to help me. Oh well, as long as he is, I won't question it. He said he'll get me some clothes and tools for a shinobi to be. Such a funny sounding word. I like it though. He said he must speak to the council and then we will begin my training. I wonder if it's the same as the Kyuubi's. Kioski's point of view. I grit my teeth as I listen to the council chatter on about how to deal with the boy. They have always been arrogant assholes, even in my day. The Mizukage, however, simply sits behind his desk in a posture of one who is deep in thought. I keep my attention strictly on him. The head council member cuts through the silence with, "Why are you so intent on teaching this boy?" The rest of the council silences their prattle with his interruption. "It seems to those of us in this council that you merely wish to replace lost chances," one particularly nasty member stated. I ground my teeth at his jab. "I believe the boy has talent," I state with a demanding voice. A female council member laughed and said, "Talent, from your description we might seem more merciful just putting him down." "I will keep my observations to myself, for I do not need to explain myself to the likes of you," I said in a dangerous hiss. "Your last attempt seemed to prove otherwise," she retorted. "Enough," said Lord Mizukage, "you may do what you wish with the boy, but it sounds like a wasted effort." I bow my head in thanks to his move. "You, however, will not teach him any of the secret jutsu of this village, nor will he be allowed to become a mist shinobi," he said with a stern voice. "He's too much of a liability." I guess that could have gone worse, I say aloud on the road home. I suppose the stipulation was to be expected. The Mizukage has been dealing with the possibilities of a civil war breaking out in Mist. The only reason helped was that he needs as many allies as he can get. He brought most of it on himself. He's been paranoid of the Seven Swordsmen ever since Kisame's betrayal. Not to mention the rising animosity toward any who hold bloodline traits. This country is balancing on the edge of sword, and if anyone slips up it will lose its manhood. I begin to giggle at my own little joke. Scaring all whom pass by. Even having people point and laugh at my insane behavior. No respect for their elders, I say grumpily. I used to be quite the ninja. I was the former head of the assassination squad of the Mist, former member of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist, and once prospect to become the next Mizukage. I can't believe how long ago that was, I sigh. As I reach the house, I notice the boy standing in the garden, still unclothed. "I hope he can dress himself," I say aloud. "I can," came the soft reply. The boy was right in front of me. Must have heard me coming, he does have potential. "Shall we get you dressed then?" I state in a teasing manner. But seriously, he must be cold. As we near the bedroom, Naruto takes the clothes I offer him and I tell him what each one was. Within 10 minutes he had on a full attire. I gave him a normal fighting under attire, tight-fitting black ninja armor. Over that he wore a blue and black loose-fitting kimono that went down to below his knees and gave him nearly half a foot covering his hands. He also wore a ninja hood with the face cover cut out. Finally he wore a white mask with no eye slits to cover his face. He seemed satisfied with the attire. "Shall we begin?" he asked in a monotone voice. "Let's," I reply with a grin. Chapter 4. Choices. Naruto's point of view. Now that my first training session is over, I'm gonna go to the room Kioski gave to me. I spare no comments to Kyosuke and he offers none to me. I prefer it this way. My training was far harder on me than I expected, I said to no one in particular. It was true while I had excelled in most of his physical exercises, but I fell short of my expectations when it came to ninjutsu and genjutsu. It seemed my chakra system was damaged too badly to use such jutsu often. We've already begun training on my tracking and swordsmanship. These are the only gifts I have to give you, Kyosuke had said. I have limits to my body that others do not, so I must work harder than them for my body to develop properly. My body, I think, with all the venom I have for the broken tool. They have crippled me in the dark, they even took measures to make sure I never leave it. My hand unconsciously sweeps over where my eyes once were. Eyes I had before my descent through the abyss. A sudden flash of determination and pride runs through me like a fire through the leaves. The abyss should have left me as nothing but I am. The descent destroyed me and yet I live. These insects will feel my full anger once I am fully revived. For that is the dream I have decided for myself, return what is properly mine, and then I will. A 6-smile twists over Naruto's already twisted face. Why I am not already healing though, I say deep in thought. The Kyuubi had said I had inherited his abilities to heal almost any wound. As long as it is attached it will heal, the Kyuubi roared. The Kyuubi's memories came rushing back to him then. It was almost like reliving that eternity all over again. He saw the flashes of the Kyuubi's memories from the incredible destruction it used to ensue to the thousands of men it destroyed, what it was, what it had done, who it hated, the reason he was damned, his father, the old man. He may have been too young, but the Kyuubi saw it all. The seal, it must still be active. The Kyuubi may be gone, but since I have evil chakras of my own now. The jutsu today, the reason I tired so quickly was that I was relying almost completely on my human chakras. If I were able to access the same energies as I could in the abyss, I could even be on par with mid-ranked Jonin, and if I achieve my demon form I could be on par with the Sannin. But how do I know all this? I say as the blinding pain hits my head. Why am I thinking in this way? What is a Jonin? Who are the Sannin? What is happening? The other voices, hands clawing at him, he was not the first to be sent into the abyss. The fragments of their souls had given some of their knowledge. The energy I used to stay alive was what was left of their spirits, Naruto said quietly to himself. He sat there thinking about this newfound knowledge and felt no regrets. I did what I had to survive. They are part of me now, so they too were released. They should be grateful. Thinking back on it made him smile. I released them, drawing the mindset I used to take. Their spiritual energies gave me a feeling of hunger, pull, and desire. I still have the ability to drain the energies from other spirits, I say, chuckling to myself, my first jutsu. Good thing the old man gave me these beads that store chakra. I will use them to break the weakened seal and finally leave the darkness, and whatever happens after that is for fate to decide. I will regain my lost time. Chapter 5. The next path. Time skip 3 years. Narrator's point of view. I hate these warm days, Naruto says to himself. For 3 long years I've been in this village and trained under the old man, and I am still no closer to my goals. I smirk at my own thoughts. I must return to my homeland. I must return to Konoha. Naruto thinks back at the past few years. The old man has taught me many jutsu. He even helped me create my own. I have mastered the silent killing style along with various other sword-wielding techniques. My speed matches that of the fastest Jonin, and I have even begun to heal slightly. Though not much else has changed. The country of Kirigakure has been like that of an overturned beehive since the Zabuzas attempted a sea nation. I had always got along with Zabuza, for we shared a similar taste in fun. To crush the lives of men. The old man has been sulking since I asked to become a ninja of the village hidden in the leaves. He only accepted because I couldn't become a Mist Nin, and we currently have a treaty with the Leaf Village. It almost hurt me to leave him. But I had to. So here I am on the road to Konoha. I can't believe I am returning to the birthplace of my damnation. But ever since I heard that the fourth has been returned to the world of the living, I believe that the Sannin known as Orochimaru had used a revival jutsu and took his place in death. Apparently the Leaf Village was in a dire state during the rock/cloud invasions. Currently the villages are in a lull. Since his revival the other 2 Sannin have returned to Konoha and the village is stronger than ever. Hopefully it will give me more chances than the mist did to allow me to become whole. Suddenly the air gets thicker and all sounds stop for a second. It seems that I am being followed, Naruto states loudly for all his pursuers to hear. So 4 men and a woman jump out of the bushes. Naruto smiles to himself, so few, this will be no fun. The men directly ahead of Naruto huffed out in apparent arrogance at Naruto, probably thinking it will be an easy kill because of his lack of a ninja headband. They sure smell foul, Naruto muses to himself. This should be easy if their chakra levels are what I should judge them by, the man furthest from Naruto states in a smooth voice. Let's get this over with before ninja come by. We're too close to the village to take chances. The others agree and draw their weapons. Naruto just stands there in a completely relaxed stance with only 3 weapons and a set of black beads with read kanjis on them. You had to feel sorry for the man. The obvious leader rushes forward, striking down with the intention to split Naruto in half. Naruto sidesteps the clumsy attack with amusement at the man's efforts. The man quickly begins to rain down a heavy score of powerful attacks in quick succession. Naruto, finally growing bored with the man's efforts, draws his 2 daggers twice as long as any kunai and just as powerful as Zabuza's broadsword. In a flash of steel the man was on the ground clutching the bleeding lump formerly known as his arm. The other thugs, enraged by their leader's injuries, run blindly forward when the figure before them was gone in a blink of the eye. Each bandit looking desperately towards the forest, adrenaline forcing them to ignore their leader's cries of pain. As the sweat pours down their face, they unconsciously start to bring themselves together in a tight with their backs facing only one another. Then a silence falls and the men were lying in scattered pieces. Their torsos had been severed from their hips on down, with only Naruto standing holding a black and blue katana. He slowly begins to approach the still writhing leader, hands already going through a steady set of seals. When the bandit looks up, he sees the same being as before, with a hand glowing in a black energy, and the black beads from before had seemingly come alive in an almost snake-like dance around the glowing appendage. As Naruto reaches toward him, the man begins to scream in utter terror as the hand reaches his chest. The man nearly fainted as he watched it phase through his chest. As the hand gropes around in his chest, the man could not find the strength to look away. He was drawn to the dark energy in both terror and grim fascination at its proceedings. When the horrible pain hits his heart, he could not find the strength to scream, as his body had been completely taken out of his control. All the comfort Naruto offered the man as his life energies passed from his body into the chakra beads was the evil laughter coming from his mouth, which then formed the words for the dying man, "SHH, take peace in the knowledge that you will help in making me complete." Soon the man's eyes turned into hollow holes, not that Naruto notices anyone, and his heart stops beating in Naruto's hands. As Naruto pulls away, he doesn't even spare a glance at the dismembered bodies before him as he continues down the path. He steps through the gore without even a drop on himself. He continues his path without even making a sound, only using enough energy to keep moving forward. Until on the horizon he can hear the sounds of a bustling city and the cool wind passing through an seemingly endless forest. So I'm home, Naruto smiles despite himself. Chapter 6. Home. A cool wind passes as a lone figure descends towards the city of Kanhagakure. The diminutive figure looked like a ghost as he descended toward the village, the moon lighting the path before him. When he reached the gates, 3 hidden guards came from their various hiding spaces. They had surrounded Naruto. He did not seem in the least surprised, which only added to their paranoia. After several seconds of silent observation, the guard closest to Naruto asked, "What business do you have in Konoha, stranger?" For nearly a minute the question hung in the air. The guards readied themselves for a fight. Naruto simply held papers out to the closest guard. He studied the papers and quickly gave them to the guard closest to the gate and ordered him off. They stood in there in silence until a second group of ninja came to collect the newcomer. As they landed, one immediately told Naruto to follow. Like shadows near a flame, they flickered in and out of the sight. Once they reached the biggest building in the village, they began walking slowly inside. It seemed to be the only building at this time to have so many people awake. Naruto was told to wait as they reached the 3rd floor room. After a minute's wait, he was allowed to come inside. He was greeted with the voice he's dreamed of silencing since hearing of his return. "Good evening, Naruto. I'm the Hokage of this village," said the Hokage with his good-natured grin. Naruto remained silent in the midst of his tormentors. "Return to your duties," he ordered the escorts. With barely an audible swish they were gone. But even then the Hokage and Naraku were not alone, they were still others. Each of these people have such tremendous chakra levels, I must remain on my guard in this village, Naraku thought. After a few seconds of respective silence a warm old voice cut through the calm. So young men, as I understand you were taught by Kyosuke. He and I are friends from wars gone by. He says in these letters you have a lot of potential as an assassin, Nin, which we is a high praise coming from him and something our village is in dire need of. Naraku turned in the direction of the voice and asked, you're the third Hokage, aren't you? The third smiled to himself and answered simply with, yes, I was. The room was once again filled with silence until a loud feminine voice cut through. Can't we get this thing over with? I'm tired of waiting for you two. We were supposed to meet with Jiraiya and Shizune an hour ago. She finished her ranting with the destruction of a desk. The current Hokage chuckled and said, just a second Tsunade, we have to make sure our new inhabitant will be comfortable. Tsunade simply huffed and yelled, that's what you said an hour ago. Naraku turned towards the Hokage and asked in his chilling tones, are all the shinobi of this village this childish, or is it only the older ones? For almost a minute there was a sound in the room as Tsunade processed the insult. Who the hell are you calling old, you little shit? She was practically being restrained by both Kage. She brushed them off and lifted Naraku off the ground by his beads. Do I look old, you mouthy little shit? Naraku chuckled, which echoed unnaturally around the room. I suppose beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, he said in his deathly quiet voice. Tsunade, having had enough of some kid's insults, was about to punt his sorry little ass back to Kiri when the fourth intervened. Tsunade, pu the boy down, he's a citizen now and I have to ensure his safety from now on, he said sternly. This was enough for Tsunade to put Naraku down, but she wasn't going to be gentle about it. As Naraku bounced on the floor, Tsunade walked over to a chair to vent. The third, waiting for used to such moments, cut through and said, well, shall we get this business over with? The fourth nodded in agreement and continued reading Naraku's file. He kept reading the papers until he looked up and asked Naraku, it says here that you're listed as permanently injured, but it doesn't specify as to the nature of your condition. Care to elaborate? Naraku took a moment to compose himself and simply said, no. The Hokage replied sternly with, if we do know the nature of your condition, then I'm afraid that I can't in good conscience allow you to become a leaf shinobi. Naraku stood there for several minutes with his head hung low, with three of the most powerful shinobi in the world waiting. He eventually said, I am scarred all over my body. The Hokage asked, anything else? Naraku said, no. The Hokage took several seconds and asked, Tsunade. The woman came out from her corner and walked over in front of Naraku, held out her hands and said, take the yellow card from my hand. After a few seconds with no reaction she said, you can't see them, can you? She waited for a response. When none came she took Naraku's hand and placed a card in it. Then she said, you know how to channel chakra, right? A stiff nod, and then she continued, I want you to channel your chakra through this card for 1 minute. As they sat there, Naraku simply crumbled the card and said quietly, I can't. Tsunade took a moment and said, that's because your chakra system had been damaged, has it not? Again no reply. The fourth sat for a moment and said gravely, these are extensive injuries. You do know that by becoming a shinobi the training alone could be fatal. Naraku nodded in response. The fourth asked, are you willing to take that risk? Naraku once again nodded. Then you will start in the academy tomorrow. According to your sensei you could easily be a genin today, but we had academy exams last week, so you will have to wait a year. Don't worry about money though, your former guardian has sent you a fair amount of money and we will supply you with an apartment for the year. Tsunade walked over to the desk and screamed, Lord Hokage, are you crazy? If you allow him to become a ninja you might as well begin digging his grave. It will tear him apart just using rudimentary ninjutsu. His chakra system is unstable, he will die. The room remained quiet for several seconds until the Hokage said, it's his decision. Tsunade screamed in frustration. Jen whipped around to Naraku and said, listen kid, being a ninja isn't worth, don't throw your life away just to become some cliché hero. Naraku laughed and said, it's the only way to achieve my goals. Tsunade sighed and said, you will die kid, there are no buts, you will die. Naraku began to remove his mask and after several straps he showed to the famous medical specialist the living testament to pain that was his flesh, and he asked her, what else would there be for something like me? For the third time her life Tsunade had been rendered speechless, so she simply stood up and walked back to her corner. The other occupants in the room were equally that anyone could do that to a child. Naraku slowly returned the mask to his face and asked, where is this apartment you spoke of? The fourth took a second and called for an escort to show him. Naruto walked out of the silent room without comment and walked towards his new home. He listened to the quiet breeze surrounding the slumbering neighborhoods, and though this breeze will carry the scent of their blood when I'm through, he smiled at the thought and continued his slow walk home. Chapter 7. Seeing through the dark. Night came and went with the sun having already risen hours ago. With Naruto currently getting ready for his first day. His first day in the village, his first day in the academy, his first day living with his tormentors. As Naruto left his apartment buildings, his hearing was assaulted with the noises of his obnoxiously loud new village. He couldn't help but imagine the day when all he could hear in this village was the sound of rotting corpses. He had a quick chuckle at the thought. He walked through the streets towards the direction of where the ninja said the academy building was. He received no greetings and kept entirely to himself. He wished it to be this way. As Naruto came closer to the building, he became aware of a great disturbance heading in his direction. As it came closer, he could hear the strangled shouts of a young boy. "I am totally going to be late. Sensei is going to kill me, and on the first day too." The boy ran past him without comment. He went colliding through doors. Naruto followed suit, albeit in more calmly manner. Naruto reached the room that a ninja directed him to. As he stepped over the threshold, he waited for the sensei to acknowledge him. After a few seconds waiting, a young man asked, "Are you the new student that Lord Hokage mentioned?" Naruto merely nodded. The young man continued, "Well, why don't we find you a seat then?" He took a moment and then led Naruto by shoulder to a currently empty seat. "Here, why don't you sit next to Sasuke?" Naruto didn't even act as if though he acknowledged his sensei's words. Sasuke began glaring at the new arrival out of the corner of the eye for a minute and then began to ignore him like the rest. Iruka waited for the class to settle before he called attention to the newest arrival. As he was doing so, he noticed that said new student was being yelled at by the class's resident harpies. He immediately scolded them for their rude behavior. Sakura Ino quit yelling at him this instant. They immediately stopped their tirade on the clearly unaffected boy. "For your information, you two, I sat Naruto there, so you'll just have to find other seats." Sakura and Ino huffed and glared at the boy but eventually walked to 2 seats a row behind them. Sasuke let out a quiet breath of relief and Naruto remained as stoic as the Uchiha. Iruka walked in front of the class and asked Naruto, "Well, since we have that out of way, Naruto, why don't you tell your classmates about yourself?" Naruto didn't even miss a second, answering with, "No." The class immediately began laughing at his blunt refusal and the baffled Iruka. Iruka eventually recovered and responded coolly, "Well then, how about I fill them in, huh?" Iruka waited for a response, and when none came, it only inspired the class into another set of giggles. Iruka took this in stride and gathered the class's attention. "Well then, since he's a little shy, I'll introduce him. This class is Naruto. He is originally from Kirigakure and has transferred here to become a ninja of the leaf." This statement got the class's attention. Iruka decided to get a little revenge at being snubbed by asking, "Does anyone have any question for him?" Naruto was immediately besieged with question from the completely idiotic two. No, they were all completely idiotic. After 10 minutes of endless questions, Iruka finally called the class to attention and began to teach the, in Naruto's point of view, substandard lesson. Naruto nearly cried out in joy when the lesson ended. He waited for the rest of his classmates to leave before he left. After walking out, he heard the voice of the boy from earlier. "Sensei, why do I have stay after today? I wasn't even late." Iruka sighed exasperatedly. "Hikaru, Lord Hokage asked me personally to give you extra help with your lessons. Because quite frankly you have not done well in past years and he wants it to be different this year." This Hikaru huffed and said, "Why would Dad ask you to ruin my year? Besides, I don't need extra lesson cause I'm already destined to become Hokage." Naruto walked past them both, anger completely consuming him. Naruto began to let what he heard rant through his mind. Naruto kept hearing the same thing, "Father, father, father. The boy must be my age. There wasn't 2 of us when I was born. Lord Hokage must have adopted. I'm so glad that I am so close to his mind." After several minutes fuming, Naruto realized that it changed nothing. He hated the man before and he will always hate him. All this Hikaru is just an unexpected way to help destroy his target. "I can't use him yet though, I must become a ninja first." With a dark determination in his soul, Naruto admitted to himself, this will be a long year. Time skip 1 year. Day of Academy exams. Naruto was waiting patiently for his final day of listening Irika ramble on the most simplistic of ninja basics. He didn't have to take the same exams as the others, considering the fact that he already has a nice variety of ninjutsu and other ninja skills that the other students couldn't even imagine. As the exams came to a close, every student was handed a headband except for one. Hikaru had failed the basic clone jutsu. Throughout the year, Hikaru had proven himself an idiot through and through. Hikaru watched as the other students received their headbands from a corner until he was accompanied by Irika's assistant Mizuki off to probably console him. It mattered little to Naruto, for he would be assigned his team tomorrow. Naruto began walking towards his favorite spot in shaded tree at the edge of the forest. When he reached this spot, he immediately found the same branch he always sat on and listened to calming quiet. After several hours of resting, he was disturbed by the sound of two men. Normally he would just ignore them, but their conversation had caught his interest. The older man spoke first. Naruto recognized him as Mizuki. I already have a way of getting to the scroll tonight. Will the cloud keep to their side of the bargain? The second man spoke. He had a much larger chakra level than Mizuki, stronger than most Jonin Naruto had met. Unlike you, the cloud can be trusted. Mizuki seemed pressed for time as he frantically said, Kabuto, I don't care about your personal dealings, but if you don't have the scrolls to your former master's curse seals, then you will never lay hands on the fourth jutsu. Naruto had become completely absolved in the conversation now. Not because of the betrayal, though, no, not that. He will achieve that on his own terms. But the prospect of curse seals powerful enough for Kabuto to believe that Mizuki will trade for the fourth sealing scroll. Naruto reveled in the possibilities. Mizuki may be useless, but this Kabuto may open all new doors for me. I will have to shadow them. Kabuto chuckled at Mizuki's empty threat, and if you dare refuse me that scroll, I will kill you. Kabuto let that hang in the air before plowing on, not to mention you will never obtain the power of Lord Orochimaru's curse seals, a daunting prospect, no. Mizuki stayed quiet for the longest time before replying with, meet me back here at dawn tomorrow. Make sure you have the scrolls. I need to go retrieve my end of the bargain. Kabuto, bemused by Mizuki's commanding tone, he replied with, I'll go fetch mine as well then. Oh, and Mizuki, don't keep me waiting. Mizuki didn't respond and just sped off. Kabuto took this moment to send a chakra wave over the area to sense for spies. Unfortunately for Kabuto, Naruto had been trained in the village of assassins. He had himself hidden so well, only if he chose to reveal himself would Kabuto notice. Kabuto began heading off along the edge of the forest, keeping to the trees, leaping only through the shadows, disguising his chakra and scent. But he could never lose Naruto, for Naruto was following him by his heartbeat, something that if he chose to hide, he leave himself vulnerable. As Kabuto went deeper into the forest, Naruto steadied his step, readying for the finishing blow. Kabuto reached an open clearing and began to go through hand seals. Upon finishing, an underground tunnel opened, revealing an overwhelming stench of long dead bodies. Once on the steps down toward the tunnel, Naruto felt an increase in Kabuto's heartbeat. The answer immediately hit Naruto, I've been discovered. Kabuto was already turning around rapidly, ready to strike down the attacker when Naruto had struck him. It had happened so fast that Kabuto hadn't even felt the blade going into his side. He immediately collapsed, body going into shock. Naruto drew his beads and prepared for his special jutsu. As he began draining Kabuto of his chakra, he noticed that his arm was tingling. And as this happened, he heard the clinking of a blade. He reached for the one that he left in Kabuto and felt nothing. The blade had fallen out, and yet there was no wound. An idea suddenly coming to Naruto, grabbed the blade once again and drew it across Kabuto's stomach. He immediately ungloved his hand and put it on the wound. To his amazement, he felt it sealing under his fingertips. For several seconds it remained as thus, the crippled boy holding onto his paralyzed prey. Naruto began to laugh out loud until he removed his mask and put his mouth to Kabuto's ear and whispered, you will be a great help in making me complete. He lifted himself a little and drained Kabuto of his chakra until he felt sure he had just enough to live but not enough to attack. He withdrew his hand, drew his second hand blade and reached for Kabuto's face. Without warning, he began to dig carefully around Kabuto's eye. As he plucked it out of the writhing knee, he pulled a single bead off of his necklace. He placed it near the eye and began to release the chakra stored within. A sudden burning whipped across Naruto's face, and the darkness swam across his vision as he viewed the world for the first time. Kabuto's chakra still healing the socket. He looked at the white-haired teen below him and began to laugh in insane mirth. Eventually his laughter died and he whispered, "Finally I have left the darkness and you have proven to be a most profitable find, and now it's time to complete my liberation." As Naraku reached for the other eye, Kabuto looked at him with his one hazel eye and said, "I'm sorry to disappoint you, my friend, but I've never been that cooperative." As he finished that, he opened his vest revealing several burning notes. Naraku immediately ran from the spot. As it blew Kabuto from this world, Naraku waited for other ninja to appear at the blast. When none came within 5 minutes, he relaxed. It seems that the Leaf are too busy with Mizuki at this time. He returned his attention to Blast Crater and smiled while saying, "Well, Kabuto, I suppose an eye for an eye, huh?" Finally taking in the scenery of the forest, he found the half-caved-in tunnel. Following the steps down, closing the doors behind, Naraku followed into the dark, ready for anything. After an hour of walking, Naraku found a room filled with shelves of human, animal, and other parts. Walking past an operation table stinking with the scent of years of pain and death, Naraku eventually found a small scroll. As he opened it, he found depictions of people in complete agony. The nature of the seals was to draw upon the human vessel's potential, drawing from the darkness in one heart, transforming the chakra into a sort of imitation of demonic chakra. Absolutely thrilled about these finds, he grabbed the scroll and any other useful items and ran down the tunnel, and after a few minutes he reached the end. He tucked the items away and turned to the tunnel. He went through a long list of hand seals, and the water on the lake rippled in the likeness of a dragon which went sailing down the tunnel, destroying all traces of his findings. He immediately collapsed on the ground, hacking up blood. He managed to wheeze out a, "Damn, shouldn't have pushed myself." Closing the doors to the watered tunnels, he headed home at a bullet's speed. "This will prove useful in the future," he said as he reached his doorstep. Chapter 8. Teams. As the sun rises, it signifies the beginning of Naraku's career as a ninja, the continuation of his ambitions, and end of his darkness. All he needs now is to complete his withered body, which, as he can see from the water, is going to be a lot of work. Naraku quickly dressed and began his final walk to the academy. Along the road he took of the happy and overly friendly villagers, seething at their mere existence. Every smiling face and small wave sent jolts of the purest loathing up his spine. As he suppressed his deepening hatred, he heard a familiar voice. "Hey Dad, why don't you just hand over the title of Hokage now? 'Cause now that I am a ninja, it's only a matter of time." Assailed the voice of none other than Hikaru. Then the voice of the fourth Hokage hit his ears. Well, I guess I'll keep my seat warm for you while you sail through the ninja ranks. But I believe you have a few more tests before you become a ninja." Naraku forged onward, not being able to stand their voices. As he was just about to round the corner, he heard the last thing he wanted to. "Hey you, Naraku, wait up." He tried to ignore it and continued walking. But then an orange blur flooded his vision. As Hikaru caught his breath, Naraku took in his appearance. Hikaru had dark brown hair, blue eyes, and was just a little taller than Naraku. "Hey man, looks like you passed too. It's real cool how you wear it as a belt." Hikaru finished that sentence with a goofy grin and thumbs up. When Naraku failed to respond, Hikaru forged on unfazed, "So want to head to the academy together?" Naraku brushed past him and continued walking, so Hikaru followed and said whatever came to mind, which aggravated Naraku to no end. Once they were in the academy for the last time, Hikaru saw Sakura and immediately ran off to talk to her. Irika was standing up front, covered in bandages and surrounded by many other ninja. Tsunade herself was there, taking his usual seat next to the Uchiha as usual, who has taken a few attempts at starting a rivalry. Naraku wouldn't bother trying to amuse the spoiled brat. When Naraku didn't respond, Hikaru took up the slack, and they have been butting heads all year. As the sensei finished their conversations, the class fell silent and Irika gave a short speech and immediately began sorting teams. After 6 weak team combinations, Irika finally said what Naraku was waiting to hear. Team 7 consists of Naraku, Hikaru Kazama, and Sasuke Uchiha. As Irika finished this, there were immediate reactions. Girls were indignant that they weren't on Sasuke's team, relief that they weren't on the creepy Naraku's team, and the bewilderment of Hikaru having passed. Irika plowed on through the students, yammering. Ignoring the rest of the team matching, Naraku looked around at his teammates and saw them having a staring match and immediately turned around in disappointment. The only other pairing that caught Naruku's attention was that Sakura has been chosen to start training in the medical corps. After all the teams were matched, they immediately left with their assigned Jonin. All except of course his own, seeing as the ninja hadn't showed up yet. After a few hours of waiting, eventually a white-haired man opened the door to the room, receiving a face full of chalk, which the Jonin found to be less than the perpetrator, namely Hikaru. After an awkward silence, the Jonin said, "Well, my first impression is you're idiots." All but Naruku's face fell, Sasuke glaring at Hikaru, Hikaru glaring back, and Naruku waiting for instructions. The Jonin eventually said, "Meet me on the roof," before vanishing in smoke. After a few flights of stairs, the young upstarts had caught up to their new sensei. The Jonin lazily broke the silence with, "Well, why don't we get to know each other? So why don't you introduce yourselves?" Hikaru, confused, asked, "What do you want to tell each other?" The Jonin, exasperated, responded with, "Well, why not your names, likes, dislikes, hobbies, interest, dreams for the future? Okay, from left to right. Go." Hikaru, taking a quick look around to make sure, started, "Well, okay. My name is Hikaru Kazama. My likes include my dad, ramen, training, and Sakura-chan. My dislikes are traitors, how long you have to wait for ramen to be done, and Sasuke. My hobbies include training, trying different types of ramen, and hanging out with my dad. My dream for the future is to be the next Hokage." Kakashi nodded and then stared at Sasuke. Sasuke started his intro with, "My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I don't particularly like anything. My dislikes are far too many to list. I have no real hobbies. I don't have a dream, no, it's more like an ambition. Because I will make it a reality. To restore my clan and to kill a certain man." His little speech only served to freak out Hikaru, confirm the Jonin's suspicions, and to bore Naruku. The Jonin turned to Naruku and waited. Naruku, using his whisper-like voice, said, "My name is Naruku. I like few things. I hate many things. I have never considered any hobbies. My dream has long since been stolen from me." Kakashi took a moment to contemplate and then began his own introduction. "My name is Kakashi Hatake. I have many likes and dislikes. I have hobbies. I don't wish to share my dreams." This only infuriated Hikaru. "Hey, that's not fair, we only learned your name." Kakashi merely shrugged and forged on. "Well, tomorrow we will begin your final genin test. We will meet at Training Ground 7 at say, 6:00 a.m. Oh, and don't eat breakfast, otherwise you'll puke." With that, Kakashi left them to prepare. As they were about to leave the building, Sasuke strode forward in front of the group and said, "You two will only hold me back if we're on a team, so try and stay out of my way." He walked away after that, leaving an uncaring Naruku and a furious Hikaru. Hikaru immediately turned to Naruku and said, "Can you believe that bastard?" To only find that Naruku had already left, leaving him talking to himself. Scene skip: Naruku apartment. Naruku had just gotten his mask off when he closed the door, then he strode forward to take a shower. After a quick rinse, Naruku was staring in the mirror, marveling at his first day of sight. When he noticed the once hazel eye staring at him had changed. It no longer contained any of its former owner's features. It now was slitted yellow eye like a cat's, rimmed with red. It had no whites, instead black. The flesh around the socket had turned a white mock imitation of human flesh. He quickly dismissed his physical limitations to continue his preparations. He went to the items he had acquired the other night. The scroll was with a few medical instruments and diagrams. Naruku had also taken a few jars filled with parts, nothing of which needs to be disclosed. At last, looking at the main scroll. Taking off the seal on the scroll, which had already been broken, Naruku unraveled it. Looking at the jutsu listed, many of which were not completed. There were a few medical jutsu, at least 2 elemental jutsu, and many forbidden jutsu. The forbidden jutsus including seals and summoning jutsu. Quickly putting the elemental jutsu to memory. Immediately looking at the seals, reading the caption under the name and drawing the seal on the floor. It took nearly 2 hours draw the full seal that Naruku wanted. Quickly summoning the energy required and preparing himself for the worse. Naruku began the long list of seals listed on the scroll. The entire room was filled with the seal drawn in Naruku's own blood. Naruku himself was covered in the kanjis making up the seal. Taking a deep breath, Naraku finished the last seal, thinking aloud, I hope this works. The next few hours passed in a blur of darkness. Visions of the Hokage lying broken on the ground, Hikaru staring back with lifeless eyes, the village burning all around. A wanting he has never experienced consumed him. As light began to envelope his vision, he saw at the nexus of that light stood the source of his want. It was a boy with long blonde hair. He was short but not overly so. The boy was staring back. He was a spitting image of the Hokage, and yet different. The boy's eyes held such a fierce energy that made Naraku realize that the boy was him. That boy was the culmination of all his troubles. As the light faded and the world came into view, all Naraku could see was those endless blue eyes. Lying on his back staring at the ceiling waiting for his breath to come back and the world to stop spinning, Naraku found that his body felt like it was on fire. Standing up in a swirl of evil chakra, all he could feel was the incredible rage of his past. As he looked down upon his body, he saw the black insignias of the seals. He also saw that his flesh was as if it was on fire. With each second he could feel more and more power. He could also feel his body weakening. The more chakra the seal forced, the more strain it put on his body. With every second he was closer to death. Clearing his mind of all anger and thinking clearly about the situation at hand. Acting quickly, Naraku went through the hand signs required to deactivate the seal. An hour after coming out of the fog, his mind Naraku was ready to go to his first team meeting. Even as fatigued as he was, it shouldn't affect his performance too much. He had been through worse for longer. Upon arriving at the meeting grounds, he noticed that he was the first one at the scene. So he took up a seat in a nearby tree and waited. Resting as much as possible, Naraku began to look through all the injuries he acquired through the night. With every minute, Naraku grew more agitated with his sensei. Sasuke had arrived minutes after Naraku. They had been sitting there for hours. Finally fed up with waiting, Naraku jumped down to leave, scaring Sasuke into a defensive stance. All Naraku said to Sasuke was, I'm tired of waiting for those idiots. If you stay to find out why they wasted our time, tell them I went home. Sasuke glared back at Naraku and said, don't waste your time, here they come. Turning around slowly, he saw Kakashi and Hikaru walking together towards the grounds. Both he and Sasuke were fuming at their tardiness. Kakashi, not even looking up from the little orange book he was carrying, said, sorry I'm late guys, but I got lost on the road of life. Hikaru took one look at Naraku and Sasuke and he had on the biggest grin Naraku had ever seen. Naraku hated that smile. He could almost feel Sasuke's anger. Hikaru practically spat out a gleeful, hey you guys, didn't you know about Kakashi-sensei's chronic lateness? Hey, I guess Sasuke doesn't know everything. Ha 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 ha. Being an Uchiha, Naraku guessed if anyone could kill with their eyes, Sasuke would be the man. So if Hikaru pushed it any farther, that glare Sasuke is throwing at him has a high chance of turning fatal. Kakashi interrupted with an, okay, how about we this test started? Naraku and Sasuke didn't even try to hide their irritation. Kakashi continued, this test will be sort of a final exam. But it shouldn't be that bad. All it is a survival test. You have until noon to collect these 2 bells from me. He held them up to see. Hikaru immediately said, but with only 2 bells, does that mean? Kakashi responded with, yes, only 2 of you can go on to be genin. Any who fail will be dropped from the program. Leaving these words hanging in the air, Kakashi set a clock in the middle of the field and simply said, begin. In a flashes of smoke and mist, the would-be ninja were gone from sight. Well, it seems they have the hang of hiding, but let's see what kind of taijutsu they know. What do you say, Hikaru? Kakashi said lazily, turning toward the remaining Hikaru. Hikaru puffed up and said, a future Hokage would never disgrace himself by running away from a challenge. I'm gonna beat you here and now. Upon finishing his rant, Hikaru rushed at Kakashi, kunai raised. As he got closer, Kakashi pulled out his book again and slapped his attack away. Hikaru jumped straight at Kakashi again. This time Kakashi moved behind him while simultaneously his hand formed the tiger seal. Surprising all the genin using taijutsu instead of nin, Kakashi sent Hikaru flying through the air with a powerful poke to the ass. Naraku quickly dismissed the trivial game Kakashi was playing with the poor boy and started looking for a place to attack. Once positioned in the proper place, Naraku waited for the other shinobi to attack before his assault began. Naraku was surprised to find that Hikaru had the ability to perform the shadow clone jutsu. Hikaru was quickly dispatched by a very basic trap jutsu. Naraku was amused at Sasuke's attempts to take the bells off of Kakashi, also surprising Naraku with a strong fire jutsu. It seemed both his teammates had jutsu considered far too draining and complex for that of Genin. At the end, Sasuke was dispatched with an earth jutsu, immobilizing him underground. Naraku allowed himself a smile as Kakashi moved back toward the lake. Infusing his voice with even more chakra, Naraku spoke to Kakashi, "It seems you have the others pinned down. Shall I take my turn?" Kakashi whipped around searching for the sound source but was unable. Projection technique. I can't follow his voice, it will echo from every direction. He also seems to have masked his chakra and scent. This one is very skilled in assassination techniques, Kakashi thought to himself. After a moment's silence, Naraku sprung his attack. Kakashi only just managed to escape the cleaving blow Naraku used with his blades. As the dust cleared from the first attack, Kakashi spoke, "That was a flawlessly performed silent killing technique. You almost got me there." Naraku laughed at Kakashi's remark and replied with, "You are a jonin after all to avoid my technique. I had made sure to make no sound. I even came from your blind spot. How did you dodge?" Kakashi said, "I saw your reflection from the lake, I acted on reflex. You moved awfully fast to be just a genin. But enough of that, shall we continue?" As soon as Kakashi finished that, they both began running toward the lake. Kakashi attempted to lose Naraku by walking it onto the lake, but once he jumped on and looked around, Naraku was gone. Suddenly he looked down to see Naraku beneath the water performing hand seals. Kakashi almost got caught by the tentacles of water that came up and tried to pull him in. Somehow Naraku got behind Kakashi in his attempt to escape. Naraku spoke softly, "Trying to escape me in water, how foolish." As Naraku and Kakashi intercepted each other's strikes, an obnoxious ring went through the air, signaling the end of the test. Both leaned back slowly off and headed quietly toward the stump. Sasuke and Hikaru were already there waiting for them. Hikaru tied to the post and Sasuke brooding. Naraku went and sat with the rest. Kakashi looked them all over and said, "Well, it seems you all failed. None of you have the slightest clue what it means to be a shinobi. You all came at me a jonin one-on-one. But you did show a lot of promise in this match, so I guess I could give you one last chance after lunch." Sasuke's and Hikaru's faces brightened at a second chance. Kakashi then said, "Here Naraku and Sasuke, you both can eat, but Hikaru doesn't get any. If you give him some, you'll fail. Bye." Kakashi disappeared in a puff. After a minute of Hikaru's rumbling stomach, Hikaru gave him his unopened lunch, saying, "I won't eat it anyway, so take it. We can't have you any weaker than you already are." Sasuke giving a quick nod in agreement. After giving Hikaru a quick bite, Kakashi came out using a powerful genjutsu, then yelled, "You disobeyed my direct orders, so I have no choice but to pass you." When he noticed the confused Hikaru, he explained, "The ninja who disobeys orders is trash, but he who abandons his team is lower than trash. So by helping each you achieve the true meaning of this test. So you pass. Show up here tomorrow at 8 a.m. for your first team meeting." He then disappeared, leaving the still confused team behind. Chapter 9. The Mission. It's been nearly a month since Team 7 had formed, and they had already completed the required amount of D-rank missions for a genin team to be qualified for the Chunan exams. Kakashi wanted them to have uninterrupted training time, although they still had to report for new missions all the same. Team 7 had done very little in the ways of training, and the team was getting agitated. None more vocally than Hikaru. "Kakashi-sensei, when are we going to stop these kiddie missions and do some real ninja work? I didn't come this far just to pull little girls' cats out of the tree." Hikaru whined to Kakashi. "We need better missions." Sasuke and Naraku were silently agreeing with Hikaru. Kakashi gave that eye smile he always does and said, "Haraider missions, huh? Well, let me talk to the Hokage and see what we can do." He began walking towards the tower, clearly wanting the genin to follow. As they made it to the steps of the tower, Hikaru screamed out in joy, "We're gonna get a real mission, yeah." The team glared at him to be quiet, which he promptly ignored, going on about how he was going to show everyone what he was capable of. Naraku just thought about he could barely wait for the day he could dispose of the nuisance known as Hikaru. Walking into a large hallway, they found the Hokage and Irika at desk covered with papers. Hikaru leaped for joy and glomped the Hokage, screaming, Hey Dad, I can't wait for this new mission you're giving us and I'm gonna make you so proud. Naruto almost spit at the scene before him before he was snapped out of it by the Hokage's voice. Kakashi, what new mission is he talking about? Kakashi sweat dropped and said, well, it seems my team is no longer satisfied for these beginner mission and wish for more of a challenge. Irika immediately huffed up in anger, well, they will just have to deal with it like everyone else, they don't need to be running into danger when they're not prepared. The Hokage looked thoughtful for a moment and then said, well, if they want a challenge they'll get a challenge. It just so happens I have 5 C-ranked missions that haven't been assigned yet. And your team may choose one. Hikaru leaped up and performed a triumphant gesture to his nun to amuse teammates. Irika was about to interject before Kakashi cut him off by grabbing the mission cards offered by the Hokage. Kakashi looked from the cards to the genin and sighed, most of these missions are out of my team's league at the moment. The only mission I believe we can succeed on is the mission to the Land of Waves. Kakashi finished with a grave note. The Hokage looked at the card long and hard before asking, are you 3 prepared to do what you must for the sake of the mission? Can you fight others without question? Can you kill if you must? The seriousness of the Hokage's voice brought all to a stop. Both Naruto and Sasuke nodded yes without a second thought, but Hikaru hesitated. Within a few seconds he had a fiery determination in his eyes. He then nodded yes. The Hokage then said, your mission then is to travel to the Land of Waves and assassinate the master bridge builder. Upon a bridge to the mainland, the Hokage looked at all the genin here and continued, we have been hired by the shipping magnate Gato for this. He ships much of Konoha's supplies and we can't afford to refuse his request. You will leave tomorrow. Kakashi and the team were stunned for a moment before accepting the card and walking away to prepare. The team went their separate ways, told only to bring essentials. Naruto had went straight home to train. Over the past month Naruto had made much progress with scroll. He had mastered several of the scroll's jutsu and even how to control his seal. Although it was more difficult due to the fact he combined the heaven and earth curse seals. The rest of the jutsu on the scroll were unfinished, so he could find no further use in it. But to be safe, using the shadow snake jutsu he learned from the scroll, he summoned a snake from his hand and had it swallow the scroll for safekeeping. Naruto knew he was prepared for the mission and how much closer it got him to his goals. He had already gained access to the ninja medical supply store, which would help in his plans. Soon enough his body shall be returned. Time skip. The next morning. As the sun rose, Team 7 was waiting for their sensei to begin their mission. Kakashi was already an hour late and the team was already agitated enough. Once Kakashi arrived, he didn't get the usual loud welcome from Hikaru, instead a somber-looking team. Team 7 then set off without a word. They didn't stop walking until sundown and Kakashi told the team their schedule of watches. The first night went by with no other words spoken. Once morning came, Kakashi told the team they would be training on the way. Okay team, today we're going to be doing chakra control exercises. Since Naruto, I know you've already mastered them, you'll be teaching Hikaru tree climbing exercises. And I'll be teaching Sasuke myself. Okay, let's start. Kakashi walked off with Sasuke glaring at Naruto and Hikaru complaining about favorites. Naruto walked up to the closest tree and began walking up it with an awestruck Hikaru. How are you doing that? Come on, show me, that's so cool. I didn't know you could do that. Naruto put his up for silence. You must first concentrate your chakra to your feet. Then disperse amounts appropriate to your size and maintain it. With each climb, mark how high you get with your kunai. It will take a while, so be patient. Naruto stood and watched Hikaru's first pitiful attempts before walking off, claiming he had his own training to do. In actuality, he followed after Kakashi and Sasuke. He found them in a field preparing to start training. Naruto hid his presence and observed from afar. Kakashi turned to Sasuke in the clearing and said, well Sasuke, you and I have been training for the last month on your speed and chakra control. Well, this mission seemed just the opportunity to teach you my own personal jutsu for assassination. The Chidori. Both Sasuke and Naruto were caught up in Kakashi's speech. Naruto was angered because of Kakashi's blatant favoritism and also excited at the prospect of this new jutsu. Sasuke seemed equally excited. Kakashi continued, the Chidori is my most powerful technique in battle. It is strictly to destroy whatever it hits, and as such it uses tremendous amount of chakra. You must not try to force it if you're less than half on chakra reserves, else you might die. Sasuke merely glared at Kakashi, clearly trying to show he wasn't scared. Kakashi walked over to him and showed him a quick set of hand seals. Then drawing tremendous power to his palm to show Sasuke and unknowingly Naruto. Kakashi thrust his palm into a nearby boulder, blowing a human-sized crater into it. Once Kakashi recovered his breath, he said, "Chidori requires a quick thrusting and tremendous energy. It's not to be used lightly." As soon as he thought it was clear, Naruto got out of there to begin his own training. For 2 weeks it went on like that. Traveling a few hours, then training until dark. Hikaru had mastered the tree climbing technique and was training on his own now. Naruto had not been able to summon a Chidori without severely hurting himself first. His system couldn't handle that much chakra being channeled at one time. Sasuke apparently was faring no better, and with each day he couldn't master the Chidori, the worse his mood got. At last they reached designated mission spot. The bridge builder was supposed to travel through this area once returning from his negotiations with his suppliers. The team set up an ambush. Naruto and Kakashi were up sitting by each other with Sasuke above with his sharing and searching. Hikaru was on the branch below, kunai in hand, trembling slightly. Kakashi has warned the team of the possibility of a ninja escort for the builder, and if that were to happen, the team needed to decide if they would stay. Not one wanted to quit for any reason. Sasuke stiffened in the branch above. He lowered himself down and said, "The bridge builder is coming, and he's not alone. 4 others are with him. They all wear Stone Village headbands and one wears a Chunan vest. Obviously another troop assigned to defend him. Too bad for them." Naruto smiled at Sasuke's cockiness. It was quite amusing, and signaled to Kakashi that he was ready. As the small group came into view, it showed an elderly man who reeked of alcohol walking behind 4 children of around his age and a Chunan that looked to be in his 30s. Kakashi stiffened upon seeing him. Kakashi was about to make his move to take out the other Chunan. The smallest of the genin walked towards the trees in an awkward manner. The Chunan called after him, "What the hell are you doing, runt? We have a mission to complete here." The boy turned around, hands between his legs, saying, "But I really got to pee. I can't hold it, so I gotta go." He ran off into the forest, leaving his team sweat roping behind. Naruto signaled to Kakashi to wait, that he had a plan. Team 7 looked toward the boy who had chosen to relieve himself under their hiding place. Naruto went through a few hand signs, and when he finished he had glowing green palms. Without a sound, Naruto appeared behind the boy. The boy zipped himself up and turned around only to have Naruto jab him in his chest. The boy spit up blood and fell to the ground dead with not a scratch on him. Hikaru was frozen to the spot. Sasuke was amazed at the speed and precision. Kakashi couldn't believe he knew such jutsu. Naruto then set the body gently onto the ground. He then used another of the jutsu from the scroll and began to peel a layer of skin off of his victim. His team looking on in disgust. Naruto took off his mask, his back to his team, and wore the skin. Soon he was covered in the boy's molted flesh. And he even put on the boy's baggy clothes. About to leave the body, Naruto took one of his blades and carved out one of the boy's eyes, placing it to his remaining socket. He used the chakra of his beads to force it into a workable position. With his new eye and his team looking on in awe as a spitting image of the dead boy left the body and deposited his clothes and mask to his team, taking only his 2 hand blades hidden in his clothes. He walked up to the other ninja, his voice imitating the boy's perfectly. "Wow, I wrote my whole name there. Hey hee hee." The other ninjas rolled their eyes, with the tallest saying, "You're so disgusting." With a shrug, Naruto tried to place himself near the bridge builder. The Chunan, however, walked into his path. "What to you, so long we were waiting?" Naruto shrugged in his skin suit and said, "Well, I had a lot of business I needed to take care of, sensei." At that moment the Chunan eyes sharpened and he attacked without warning, smashing Naruto into a nearby tree hard. The other genin were frozen in shock. The only girl asked, "Sensei, what did you do that for? You might have hurt him." She made to go help the fallen boy before her sensei stopped her with his hand. He calmly spoke to the downed boy, "You almost got away with it. You had me completely fooled with your jutsu. But you made the mistake of calling me sensei. Something that my boy has never done. Now what have you done with my son?" The Chunan ended his rant in a shout. A dark chuckle seemed to resonate through the area. Then Naruto spoke, "So he was your son?" No wonder you saw through my disguise. The stone genin were frozen in fear as Naraku rose from the ground, both of his blades extending from his hands. Do you really need me to confirm what you already know? If it comforts you, he probably felt little pain. The Jonin bowed his head and signaled his remaining genin to get into position. As the shinobi prepared themselves for battle, Naraku rose his head, showing that the boy's skin had been ripped off from the Jonin's punch, reveal one of his eyes. The genin were frozen from the killing intent coming from his malicious eye. In a flash he was gone behind the genin next to the bridge builder, already swinging his blades. The Jonin, however, caught his attack and was about to strike when Kakashi intervened. Without any words, the two Jonin squared off, leaving the genin in Naraku's and Sasuke's hands. Sasuke started it off with a phoenix flower jutsu. Scattering the ninja, Naraku took advantage and attacked the bridge builder, only to be caught by a new ninja, obviously Jonin. His eyes burned at Naraku, obvious anger in them. Sasuke quickly knocked out his two opponents and rushed past Naraku, hand flared up in a chidori, only to have it blocked by a boulder from the ground. The Jonin wasted no time in incapacitating Sasuke by trapping him in a boulder. He then swiveled around and rushed at Naraku. At first Naraku believed he the upper hand with his speed, but when he tried to cut the Jonin with his blades, they would bounce off his skin like it was armor. Naraku managed to dodge the wild jutsu the other sent toward him with ease, but as soon as he tried to counter-attack, the Jonin would rush him with a scroll full of weapons. Eventually Naraku was overwhelmed by the other's strength, lying broken on the ground as the ninja walked slowly towards him, ready for the finishing blow. With Kakashi so far away fighting that Naraku couldn't sense him and Sasuke trapped, Naraku prepared himself for death. Naraku, however hard he tried, could handle dying just yet. With his last surge of power, he flipped through hand seals and pointed it at a rock behind the Jonin, screaming, striking shadow snake binding jutsu. The Jonin was dragged back to the rock by the snake, struggling with his holds. Knowing that the snakes wouldn't hold him long, Naraku prepared himself. This time ready for death, for if he was going to die, he wanted to have control over how and where. Using the power of the curse, Naraku began summoning energy into his hand. His began to burn from all the chakra he was drawing out, forcing all of it into a single point on his hand. And it formed not like Kakashi's or even Sasuke's deep blue that created the sound of birds chirping. Naraku was black with white electricity pouring out. It made the sounds of metal scraping. With a surge, Naraku ran toward his bound opponent and rammed his hand through the man's chest, with Sasuke looking on in anger. As the boulder crumbled, the snakes disappeared and the body fell limp. Naraku took 2 steps towards Sasuke and collapsed, awaiting death and cursing his father and Hikaru, and then all light faded. Chapter 10. Chunan Exams. As conscious thought returns to Naraku, all he could do is question himself, am I still alive? Trying to sit up, he realized he was too weak to raise himself. He quickly abandoned the fruitless attempt. Taking in the overly sterile scent and the endless racket that could only come from others, Naraku surmised he was either in a hospital or he went to hell. Considering his circumstances, it could be both. With a groan, he opened his eyes, squinting at the light. The dull room he was in only served to confirm his suspicions. Naraku followed along the room until his gaze rested on his mask. Quietly grasping it, within seconds he was covered again in his signature item. Naraku barely noticed that his sensei had entered the room. He must be slipping. Upon meeting faces, Kakashi took it upon himself to break the silence. So Naraku, I see you're feeling better. You really had a scared there for a moment. Naraku made no sign of hearing him. Kakashi sighed and continued. At first, when I saw the body of the other nin, I thought Sasuke had killed him. But judging by Sasuke's position and his account, it seems you got him. You should be proud. Again Kakashi pauses. Again Naraku gave no sign to have heard him. I suppose you were spying on us when I was teaching Sasuke. A testament to your true skills for me not to have noticed. But I must warn you. You cannot use my technique lightly. The atmosphere in the room immediately calmed down when Kakashi smiled and said, on a lighter note, I have come here to ask if you want to compete in the Chunin exams next week. Naraku turned to Kakashi and nodded. Kakashi then said, well, the doctor said that you may leave in a few days. Your team has already begun training for the exams. I believe you'll be ready, but it couldn't hurt to brush up on a few skills. Well, see you in a week. Kakashi left with a wave and a wink. As soon as he was gone, Naruto allowed himself to relax. So the Chunan exams. It will at last allow me to leave this team behind. I have grown so tired of their company. At the very least it will bring more weakling to make me stronger. He went to sleep with a smile on his face and a hunger in his heart. Time skip. Day of the exams. As Naruto walking towards the designated meeting place. On his way there he heard the voice of one of his teammates. Hikaru, and he sounded like he was in a fight. Naruto took a moment to consider it and decided to intervene if necessary. He took a perch near the fight and watched. Hikaru was standing next to Sakura and was facing to Chunan. One a tall boy with face paint and the other a girl with pigtails and a fan. The boy was holding a much younger boy in the air. One which he recognized as the third's grandson. The boy with face paint spoke to Hikaru, "Why don't you Konoha punks mind your own business? 'Cause if you're all Konoha has to offer, then I almost feel sorry for this place." The boy sneered at Hikaru, who was moments away from attacking the other nin. Upon closer inspection of his teammate he noticed that he had a few bandages on his body. Perhaps he got them in training, Naruto thought to himself. Hikaru demanded the taller shinobi to let the boy down. Which the other only tightened his grip on the boy. Hikaru then charged in like a berserker, only to be tripped by the boy's chakra strings. Obviously one of Suna's infamous puppet masters. Naruto thought to himself. A moment after the foreign nin's attack, a small rock flew out of a nearby tree. Sasuke, Naruto was amused by his dramatic entrance and pose. He would have laughed had it not given his position away. Sasuke then spoke to the offending nin, "If you guys are looking for trouble, then you're way out of your league." After finishing his little speech he crushed a second rock in his hand. Then another much colder voice came from the same area, "Kankuro, that's enough. You're a disgrace to our village." The two sand nin immediately froze in fear. Sasuke tensed, obviously displeased with having the other nin sneak up on him without him realizing his presence. The new shinobi disappeared and reappeared in a shroud of sand. As the sand clears, a clearer view of the shinobi could be had. The boy had blood-red hair and pale skin. Even from his distance he could see the circles around his eyes. Eyes that were a pale green and held naught but killing intent. Naruto felt chills up his spine. But not from fear, no excitement. He wanted to get closer to this shinobi to bask in his pungent scent of blood. In his excitement he ignored the conversation had between the shinobi and his teammates, but they were obviously in complete fear of this much shorter ninja. As he turned to leave, Sasuke's voice halted him. "Wait," he demanded as pompously as ever, but the sand shinobi humored him and stopped. "I'm curious as to who you. I would enjoy testing my skills against your own. Tell me your name." The sand ninja turned to him and said, "I too am interested in you. My name is Gaara no Sabaku, what's yours?" Sasuke took on a harder stance as an invitation and said darkly, "Sasuke Uchiha." Gaara nodded and three sand nin began to walk away until Hikaru said, "Hold on a minute there, you think you can just have your big dumb gorilla and his little pigtail friend attack us and then just walk away without asking me my name? Don't you want to know who I am?" Gaara didn't even bother breaking stride before answering, not in the least. Kankuro and his friend, however, were about to unsheath their weapons and attack for Hikaru's comments. Sasuke readied himself for the attack. This was the time to get close to study his enemy. As they were raising their weapons over their head, Naruto halted their movements in an instant without a single sound. After a moment of awkward silence, the two shinobi were frozen in place, feeling blades tickling both of their necks. Gaara turned to look at their attacker. Naruto took this time to speak, "It seems you two are just as annoyed by Hikaru as the rest of us are. That is understandable. However, if you attack my teammates, I will have to end your lives." After his warning he lowered his blades from their necks, allowing them to back away. Once they had put themselves safely behind Gaara, which Gaara showed his outright disdain towards his friends. Gaara took in Naruto's appearance and then asked, "What is your name?" Naruto then answered, "My name is Naruto." Gaara nodded and turned his gaze to Sasuke and then said, "I do hope we meet in the exams. Opponents such as you two don't come very often. I will enjoy killing you greatly." After which the trio continued on their way. Naruto turned to his team, find Sasuke glaring at him, a fuming Hikaru, and Sakura looking at Sasuke in pure adoration. Sasuke ignored Sakura's attempts to get his attention so he could speak to Naruto. So you're back from the hospital. We thought we would have to replace you for the exams. Naruto ignored him and walked toward the group. Hikaru was obviously uncomfortable in his presence. Perhaps the wave mission was too much for him. Naruto interrupted the silence with, "Shall we get going?" As the team was walking towards the exam building, Sakura called out, "Hey, Sasuke, I just want to thank you for saving us from those guys back there." She paused here for Sasuke's acknowledgement. Sasuke just HNND without looking back at her. She looked hurt for a moment before it disappeared and she asked, "Maybe we will meet at the exam, Sasuke. I would really love to be with you again." She waited for Sasuke to react to her bold statements, of which he completely ignored. She just waved the team by with Hikaru looking back at her incredulously. He looked at Sasuke and said, "You could have at least been nice to her, Sasuke. Honestly, I don't know why she even likes you, when there are so many others out there for her." Naruto snorted at Hikaru and said, "Someone out there? Don't you mean someone right here?" As he finished his inquiry, he placed his arm around Hikaru, getting uncomfortably close to him. Hikaru roughly shoved him away, glaring at both Naruto and a smirking Sasuke. Upon reaching the tower, they were intercepted by Kakashi. He waved at them and said, "Hey, I just came here to congratulate on making it this far. I just want to warn you about being careful during the exams. There are sure to be plenty of strong opponents this year. Just saying, good luck." Kakashi disappeared with a wave and the three ninjas walked through the doors. Upon reaching the top of the stairs to the floor they were supposed to go to, seeing groups of ninja being blocked entrance by two Chunan, they walked through the hallway, ignoring the other ninja trying to get to the next level without incident, until the Chunin called for them to stop. "Hey, where are you going? Aren't you guys here for the exams?" Naruto wanted to just ignore the weaklings, but Sasuke had to showboat his skills. "That's where we're going. The exams are on the 3rd level. This is only the 2nd. That sign has a genjutsu on it." The two Chunin looked at each other before the closest said, Well, aren't we clever, but can you back up that intelligence?" Without warning, he and Sasuke attacked each other, but before either attacks connected, a green blur intercepted their attacks. When he stopped, it was a tall boy with a bowl cut and a green spandex suit. He was looking directly at Sakura, who was standing stunned next to her team. He continued staring at her until his teammates, one a pale boy with dark brown hair and silvery eyes, the other a girl with brown hair rolled up in buns. The boy asked him, "What are you doing, Lee? I thought we agreed to hide our true skills until further into the tournament." Lee said nothing and his team left irate up the stairs, passing the Team 7 in glare, until they stopped and turned towards Sasuke asking, "What's your name?" Sasuke passively said, "I don't owe you my name." The boy grimaced and Sasuke and the rest of Team 7 walked up the stairs towards the exam rooms. The girl walked behind the still grimacing boy and said, "Well, the last Uchiha, huh? He sure is a bold one. Are you gonna challenge him, Niji?" The boy huffed and walked up the stairs after them, his teammates on his heels. After a long speech, a bunch of cheating, and the written part of the exams revealed to be a sham, they stood in front of the forest of death and a crazy woman. "Shut up, runts, and let's begin the second half of the exams. An exam I know half of you won't pass or even survive at that." Hikaru cocked his and in an obnoxious imitation of her voice repeated what she just said. With a throw of kunai and a blur of movement, she was behind Naruto, attempting to lick the blood of his face. She only stopped to pull out another kunai and flash warningly to Naruto, who had her thrown kunai in hand and had gotten behind her without her noticing. He then said, "You seem to have dropped your kunai." She took the blade from his hand and said, "Thank you, ninja, but if you expect to live longer, I suggest you don't get behind me again." Naruto had only decided to get this close for the simple fact that he had recognized the seal adorning her neck. She saw his gaze and covered it from view in her first act modesty. Team 7 had already this early in the exams made themselves targets and not one of them cared. They were just anxious for the challenge, one that was sure to be rewarding. As Team 7 was waiting for the exams to begin, Sasuke and Naruto formed a plan to set up a perimeter around the forest tower and attack whichever teams came through first. Once the bell rang, all teams ran off to get the other scroll they needed. For nearly an hour, Team 7 ran towards the tower. Upon reaching within a seeing distance of the tower, Team 7 spotted two other teams in a fight. They were low-level ninja from the Sand and Cloud villages. Sasuke and Naruto nodded toward one another. They signaled for Hikaru to block the ninja's escape with his shadow clones. The fight below was over pretty quickly, with the Sand Nin standing over the unconscious Cloud team. Sasuke activated his Sharingan, something he must have gained in training with Kakashi. With a nod, both Naruto and Sasuke attacked the weakened ninja. Naruto struck down the two ninja that were closest together. The third, upon seeing this, tried to flee into the forest, only to be engulfed in a ball of flames by Sasuke's attack, incinerating him to ash. Searching the bodies, he found both scrolls. Naruto was about to kill the stirring Cloud team when Hikaru stopped him, clearly objecting. As the team looked on in horror at the dismembered bodies staring up at Team 7, Naruto handed the needed scroll to Sasuke, who looked sternly at the cowering Cloud Nin. Hikaru clearly against their deaths. Instead, Naruto held the unneeded scroll out in front the Cloud Nin and said, "It seems that my teammate here wishes us to spare your lives. But we can't have interfering in the future either." Upon saying this, the scroll in hand burst into green flame. Team 7 then headed to the tower. They entered the towers and unrolled both scrolls. They were greeted by a summoned Chunan and given a brief speech of the Ninja Code and the Alliance of Nations. Walking into the waiting chambers, they realized they were the first ones to the tower. Naruto and his team had to wait 5 days to get for the rest to show up. To be continued.